Well, thanks very much, everyone, for coming to this event today. As I said just now, I want this to be an interactive event. I think with a lot of these talks, they're kind of treated as spectator events where people come along like they come to the rest of the festival, watch the person, listen to the person speak, and then go away having been entertained for an hour and maybe don't think very much more about what they've heard. And I think if everyone can take more part in a talk themselves, then that's something that may be more useful to them in future. So that's what I'm going to do today. And that's why I haven't got a presentation or anything like that, because this is going to be a discussion between me and you in order that together we can find a way forward for... I'll get my voice back. Find a way forward for animal liberation. Okay, the first thing I want to ask you is, how many of you are vegan already? Could you put your hands up if you're vegan? Right, there's most people here are vegan. And I suppose the other people here who aren't vegan are people who are thinking about vegan or are sympathetic towards veganism. Would that be right? Yeah? Okay. The second question I want to ask everyone is, why are you vegan? Would anyone like to tell me why they're vegan? Yeah? Anyone? You must know why. Oh, yeah.
To respect animals.
Okay, to respect animals. Anyone else?
Because humans and the other animals are equal.
Lovely, that's brilliant. Is that really the reason why all of you are vegan? Or does anyone have any other reason for being vegan?
Second generation.
Sorry?
Second generation.
You're a second generation vegan, so your parents were vegan. But you still believe in that view, do you? That, yeah. Well, the fact is that overwhelmingly most people, I mean, there's various reasons for being vegan. Veganism is obviously better for other animals. It's better for the environment, it's better for our health, and it's better in terms of feeding everyone in the world. But most people tend to be vegan for the animals because they're opposed to animal suffering. And because basically people who are vegan want animal liberation, want animals to be free from oppression and persecution at the hands of human beings. Now, if we're going to end the oppression of other animals, we really need to know what causes it. So, has anyone got any ideas about what's the fundamental cause of the persecution of other animals? Anyone got any?
Profit making. Profit making?
Okay. Anyone else? Same thing. Anybody else?
Social conditioning.
Yes, that's a very good one, social conditioning. But what is it that makes humans think that we can use animals in that way?
I think we have a kind of inherent belief that we are superior and that dominate what we feel is an inferior, any kind of species we arrogantly consider to be inferior.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's true. We abuse and exploit animals for profit hugely, and it's true that people are conditioned to do that. But I think overwhelmingly, the reason for the whole thing is what my friend here said, is that humans regard themselves as superior to other animals. In other words, we're talking about a problem of speciesism, which also can be referred to as human supremacism. So we've got this supremacist attitude amongst human beings that makes us, well, not us as vegans, but makes most human beings feel that they can exploit and abuse other animals for their own purposes. And of course, if we're going to achieve animal liberation, if we're going to free animals from persecution, then we need to change human behaviour so humans do not behave in a supremacist way towards other animals. And if we're going to change people's behaviour, what do we need to understand if we're going to change people's behaviour? Anybody? People have to want to make the change. Yeah, that's a good one.
Why they think that we're above other animals, the reason for that feeling of supremacy?
Yeah, that's great. Yes, I mean both of those things are absolutely right. But if we're going to change people, we're going to change people's behaviour. What's another important thing we really need to understand?
I was going to say it's because there's so much denial and so many layers of socialization. So it's change the beliefs. We need to change the beliefs before we can change behaviour.
Just understand why they're doing those things.
Yes, I kind of think all those answers are right, but I think you'd agree with me that they kind of all add up to the same thing, which is that if we're going to change people, we need to really understand the way that people operate. If we want to say, if something's wrong, something's broken, in order to repair that, we need to understand the way that particular thing should work. And I think it's the same with humans. We need to understand the way humans operate in order to change them. And I mean, another question I was going to ask, the next one, which really has already been answered, is why are human beings speciesist? Why do we have this supremacist attitude towards other animals?
Other animals kill other animals as well. You know, other animals eat other animals. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not a vegan, but I'll say that. But they do kill other animals as well.
Yes. No. I mean, this is kind of a bit off the track of the talk, but it's an important point. Other animals kill other animals, and yes, they do. Other animals kill other animals in order to survive, mostly. The major difference between human beings and other animals is that we have the ability to choose. Other animals don't have the ability to choose. They act out of instinct. They act out of the need for food. A cat will jump on a mouse and a lion will jump on a gazelle out of instinct. But we're really the only species that's got a kind of highly developed capacity to choose. And if we have the ability to choose between a way of living that causes suffering and slaughter and another way of living that doesn't cause suffering and slaughter, or which causes much less of that, then really we have the moral obligation to choose the way of life that causes the least slaughter and suffering. And that's simply because we have that. If we have the ability to choose, we have the obligation to choose the best way. And I think that's really the answer to that question. Other animals don't have that power of choice, and so they cannot be blamed, for killing in order to eat, because they have no choice in that. Right. Well, in order to change people, in order to change people's beliefs, as somebody suggested, what do we need to do? Educate. Yes, we need to educate. It's very important. And if we're going to educate people to not be speciesist, to not be human supremacist, then what is the most speciesist thing that people do in their everyday life? In their everyday behaviour, what is the activity that people do that's most indicative of that?
Eat meat.
Yep. Eat meat, consume other animal products. And the reason for that is overwhelmingly the consumption of animal products is the worst form of animal abuse. Does anyone know what percentage of, if we take the normal areas of animal abuse, who knows what those would be, the type of things that people campaign against in terms of animals being abused? Can somebody give me, some idea of what those are?
Live exports.
Yeah, live exports. Anyone else? Vivisection, slaughterhouses. Anything else? Factory farming, dairy. There's a whole lot of things that there are campaigns about. If you go out there, there's stalls against animal experiments, stalls against live exports, against the fur trade, against hunting, against all these different forms of animal abuse. But overwhelmingly, the biggest area of animal abuse is where animals are slaughtered and made to suffer for the purposes of food production. And out of all those areas of animal abuse that I've mentioned, does anyone know what percentage it is of animals that actually are slaughtered for the food industry as distinct from all the other forms of animal abuse? Yes, 99.5%. 99.5% of animals that are abused by humans. If we look at the traditional areas that are campaigned against, but there is an area that's been forgotten. There's an area that's been forgotten here that hasn't been mentioned. That's another huge area of animal abuse. And there's number of experiments. If we take, for instance, you mentioned experiments. If we take the UK, the number of animals that are slaughtered for food amounts to about a billion land animals, something like 4.5 billion fish, and something like 2.5 billion shellfish. That's according to Viva, the campaigning organisation, their figures. So that's a total of, what's that, about 8 billion animals, something like that, that are slaughtered for food and undergo mostly horrific suffering before they're slaughtered, because most of those animals are factory farmed or caught by industrial fishing methods, which are extremely cruel. But in terms of animal experiments, the number of animals that undergo painful experiments every year in the UK is around about 4 million. Plus there are other ones that are bred for experiments and get killed without being experimented on, that pushes that figure up. But that figure is probably no more in total than about 10 million. Whereas the number of animals that the food industry accounts for is probably around about 8 billion. So there's a huge difference. Out of all those areas we talked about, animal experiments is actually the second highest. But there is another area. There's another area of animal slaughter and suffering caused by human beings, which hasn't been mentioned. Sorry. Pet food? No, not pet food. I mean, pet food would come under probably the food industry one. Yeah, I mean, you've kind of touched on something there, not just insects. The second biggest area of animal abuse by humans is our impact on the environment. Now, you mentioned insects being killed by cars, by motor vehicles, for instance, and pesticides as well. And pesticides don't just kill insects, they kill all sorts of other animals as well. Now, it's estimated by wildlife organisations that every year in this country, 100 million birds are killed by motor vehicles, 1 million mammals. There are 3 times more foxes killed by motor vehicles on our roads than are killed by hunting. 50,000 badgers a year. We talk about the badger cull, there's big opposition to the badger cull. If the badger cull was rolled out to its full extent, 100,000, they want to kill 100,000 badgers nationwide through the badger cull. But every single year, 50,000 badgers are killed on our roads. So that human impact on the environment, I mean, I'm only just mentioning travel on the roads by humans killing animals. But our total impact on the environment in terms of housing development, destroying wildlife areas. I mean, for instance, to kind of show you how serious human impact on the environment is, that in the Middle Ages, when the human population worldwide was only 300 million, most of the major forests in Europe had already been destroyed by human activity. And that's just how dangerous really humans are to the environment. And of course, those forests were the homelands of animals, and all those animals living in the forests, or certainly most of them, would have lost their lives through that. So that's just how destructive a species we are. And so and this is an area that people campaigning for animal liberation don't really think about and don't really talk about. There was a talk earlier that I missed very sadly about the effect of human population, why human overpopulation is an animal rights issue. And it is an animal rights issue for that reason, because of our destructive effects on other animals. It's not just population, it's the way we behave, it's our use of technology, it's our consumption of natural resources and all those things. So that really is at least the second biggest area of animal abuse. Anyway, going back to what I said about changing people. Now, if we're going to educate ordinary people, and if we're going to change the way they behave, where is it we have to be? Where do we have to be to educate ordinary people? Yeah, somebody said on the streets, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. If you're going to educate ordinary people, you've got to be where ordinary people are. You've got to be where ordinary people are to educate them. And where else do we have to be heard? Schools, yeah, schools where children are. Anywhere else? Sorry? Yes, be a good example, but if you're, and that's true, I mean, as vegans, we should all be good examples, but I think the problem is if you're a good example, how many people see that example? It's just the people around you that know you that see that example, and that's important. But if we're going to achieve animal liberation, if we're going to educate a large number of people to go vegan, media, yeah, that's the next one. And what sort of media do we need to be in if we're going to educate ordinary people? Social media, but social media, well, when we're on Facebook, who are your Facebook friends? Are they ordinary people, or are they people like you and me, people we know, people that believe the same as us? They're mostly that, aren't they? Nearly all my Facebook friends are vegans, because they're my friends. So if I put stuff on Facebook, I don't really think that that's going to educate many other people. Well, it's not going to educate anyone, because they're already educated. So what sort of media do we need to be in? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We need to be where ordinary people are. In other words, on the streets, at events where ordinary people are, and we need to be in the media that ordinary people look at and listen to. Those are really the two places that we need to be. In terms of educating people, being where ordinary people are, what kind of events can we do to promote that? Education stalls, yeah, that's very important. Street stalls, vegan outreach, yeah, that's right. But kind of what in what form? What different forms of vegan outreach? I mean, street stalls are a form of vegan outreach. Yeah, food samples at stores. That's a very good one.
And it's events that they only go to, like music festivals, Strictly Come Dancing, anything where they're looking and those messages to reach a huge amount of people like that. I think like this, like having music
Yeah.
dancing here, brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's right. We've got to be where ordinary people are. Ordinary people aren't going to come to us. We've got to go to them. We've got to be in places where ordinary people are spreading our message. And in order to do that, what would you say is the best vehicle for doing that, or at least certainly one of the best vehicles for spreading that message? Sorry? Yeah, getting on the radio. This was a reference to LBC, which is a local station for. Yeah. And in terms of getting in the media, you're going to have far more success with local media than with national. It's very difficult to get in national media. It doesn't mean that you can't get in there, but it is difficult. But local media is relatively easy to get in, get stories in promoting veganism, providing that you do it in the right way. Providing you do it in a way that's going to be attractive to the media. And letters to local media, when you look through your local paper, if there's an issue, you think, I can write a letter to the paper in connection with that, and I can promote veganism, or I can promote some form of concern for animals, then get a letter into the paper, because thousands of people are going to read that. It's said that letters pages of local papers are the page that most people read, because people are nosy and they want to see what other ordinary people are writing. So letters pages tend to be very popular. And so that's very important to do that. But it's kind of, it can be hard to do things sometimes just on your own, like if you're doing a stall or another vegan event. So there needs to be a getting together with other people to do those things. And so I think that one of the most important things, important organisations say for spreading veganism, for vegan outreach, would be your local vegan group, your local vegan outreach group. A group of people in the same area getting together, organising things, organising stalls, even organising right into the media, because if there's several of you, you can all get, they don't always want to print letters from the same person. So you can get that organised. So how many vegans are there in the UK? Can anyone give me a figure for that? Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else got any idea? Yeah. Yeah, that was a figure. That's a figure from the Vegan Society from a few years ago. I think they did some sort of a survey then. They came up with a figure of 150,000 vegans in the UK. Now, there's other sources. I read in the newspaper not so long ago that there's 600,000 vegans in the UK, which would be brilliant. But if we, say we take that figure of 150,000 as being the number of vegans in the country, Now, how many people here have taken part in vegan outreach events, have done street stalls or anything like that? Okay. Yeah, so you're talking about a small number of people to do an event like that, and some events obviously take more people. Right. Now, if we take the figure of 150,000 vegans in the UK, which is probably a low estimate, is that it's probably a lot more vegans than that. And if and when the Vegan Society do their next survey, it may turn out there's far more than that. Now, say for the sake of argument, for each vegan event that vegans did, that you needed 10 vegans to do that event, right? If you do the sums, 150,000 vegans, 10 vegans to do an event, and most often it would be less than that. But let's say 10 vegans to do each event. And every vegan, or every one of those 150,000 vegans did just one thing a month, one event a month, then how many, I mean, I've got an advantage over you because I've already worked this out, but how many events do you think they would be? And about how many a day? I worked out about 500. 500 vegan outreach a day events in the country every single day. Just think how many people would be turned vegan if we were able to do that many events. If every vegan in the country just did one thing a month, just helped behind a stall or gave out leaflets or did something, got a letter in the paper, anything, we could have 500 events a day. But we don't have anywhere near that, do we? Have anywhere near that level of activity. And so obviously the reason for that is because most vegans don't do anything apart from being vegan. Now, if we're going to educate people to be vegan, who's going to do that? Is that going to be meat eaters? Is it going to be vegetarians? Who's going to need to do the education? Us, yeah, other vegans, right? So a bit later on, there's going to be a debate here about the best form. People are arguing about the best form of activism. People are arguing about, well, is the best form of activism vegan outreach, or is the best form of activism single issue campaigning? Well, I personally think that's the wrong debate. That's the wrong debate. Because I think it's great that anyone's active for animals in whatever way, because at least they're bloody well active. And the problem is we've got, isn't what activism, if someone wants to go and do hunt sabs, great, they're saving animals. Somebody wants to go and save animals from budget code, brilliant. Somebody wants to protest against vivisection, brilliant. At least those people are saving animals. And people can still become vegan through those things. I mean, one of the best vegan campaigns in this country that I know of became vegan because, and this is really ironic, he became vegan because he was still living at home with his parents. His mum asked him to go and pay the milkman, to take her purse and go and pay the milkman. And when he was doing that, in her purse, he found an anti-vivisection leaflet that she'd picked up from a stall in the town centre earlier that day. And that was a leaflet, it didn't mention veganism, I think it was from the BUAV, it was an anti-vivisection leaflet. He read that, said, oh my God, I've got to do something about that. And through getting involved in that, he eventually met vegans, became involved in another activity, and now is, one of the, is one of the best activists in this country for vegan outreach. So vegan outreach can come through all sorts of ways, and I think it's a shame that people are arguing about what form of activism is best, because it's not the debate we should be having. The debate and the discussion we should be having is how do we get more people active? How do we get more people active? Because obviously most vegans aren't active. I mean, I think most vegans are probably active in going around eating vegan cakes, discussing between one another the latest vegan product in Morrison's, swapping recipes on Facebook. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we all love to eat vegan cakes, and we all want to know what the new vegan product is. Of course we do, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to spread the vegan message to the public, because if we don't spread that message, we're not going to get animal liberation. We're not going to get animal liberation because the thing is, we look at the figures for the number of vegans. Yes, those figures are increasing. They are, and that's brilliant. But what we forget is also the number of people consuming animal products is increasing, because the world's population is becoming larger. Probably most of those new people being born are going to consume animal products, and also countries in the world that traditionally consumed mostly a plant-based diet and now sadly switching to a more Western diet where they're consuming a lot more animal products. So we're being outrun, even though we've got more and more people becoming vegan. We're being outrun because more and more people are consuming animal products. So our efforts have to be greater, and we have to, we have to find ways of educating and persuading. It's not a question of just educating the public. It's a question of how do we educate, how do we persuade other vegans to get involved in outreach. Now, kind of what we've helped, obviously there are people, hands up everyone here who is involved in vegan outreach, has done vegan outreach at all. Hands up. Okay. Now, who hasn't? Is there anyone who hasn't? Because what I'm interested in is if people aren't involved in vegan outreach, and if they don't do vegan outreach, is finding out the reasons why not. Because if we're going to persuade more people to do vegan outreach, then we need to know the reasons why people don't do it so we can address those reasons. So can anyone help me with that?
I just, you talked about social media earlier and saying no to social media because it's Facebook and stuff. I'm only 4 months into veganism, and I was converted on Facebook by a covert clip, and it just broke every bit of my denial over. It was just hell. And so I'm very new. And the idea of outreach is I became so incensed when the veil was lifted. Almost immediately I was that kind of vegan newcomer who was just like, what the fuck is going on? What's happened to humanity? And crying and traumatized and all that sort of newbie stuff. And I just didn't know what to do, and I was just like randomly saying shit to people, and they don't want to know, obviously. They don't want a fanatical vegan in their face. And so I learned that fast. And so it was through social media and YouTube that I continued to stay vegan and kind of realized that that isn't the way to do it. And I followed a lot of people who do stuff on YouTube. And that kind of, I learned a lot more about it. And then I've just got a scholarship on Dr. Will Tuttle's kind of his anthropology and his history. So the World Peace Diet, to come from a place, try and use a language that people will accept. So I'm not doing activism. I'm not out in the world doing activism, not least because I'm so new to it. Because I'm still getting rid of leather and shit, just giving it away to whoever. And but because I'm such a baby, and I really don't know, it's also that thing of, and I really hear you say that, we need to be out there and doing it, and that's the difference. But I equally do believe that it is, absolutely one-to-one, but I do believe in the power of social media. It converted me, and I can see the effect, especially on young people, all these people turning vegan because of YouTube. It blows me away. So there's the power of that. So that is a draw to me. That is personally what draws me, but I just don't feel I have the confidence yet in it. I don't have the experience yet in it. But I will do this course with Will Tuttle. I've got a scholarship to do it, so who knows. So that's why I'm not an activist.
That was very interesting. I think you raised 2 points there. The first one about social media. Now, there are some good things about social media, and I think it is the case that obviously some people can be changed by social media. But I think the problem is it's so easy to sit in your chair in front of the computer and click on one petition, click on the other, share something on Facebook, and kind of think that you're active and think that you're changing the world. And I think it's very important that people are kind of a bit more realistic about that and kind of see the limitations of that in terms of what people you are actually reaching. Social media is very good for events, for spreading news about events. I mean, there's probably loads of people that have come to this event because of social media, because of the event being spread on social media. I think it's important for that. So I'm not saying not to use social media, but I'm saying too, there's a danger. It's like everything. There's good ways of using it. There's bad ways of using it. And we need to try and stick to the good ways without the bad, and not to kind of think that just being on social media is all we have to do. The second point is about people that are new to veganism. Obviously, if somebody's just become a vegan and they're finding their feet, then they're not going to be really in a position to kind of get out there and educate people. But most vegans aren't like that. I mean, there are vegans that have been vegan for years, many years, that don't actually involve themselves in outreach. And it is a big problem, because it is only vegans that have it in our power to spread veganism.
I was just going to say, I think sometimes the battle is that people don't feel like they have very much confidence, because going out in the street isn't everybody's cup of tea, and just randomly talking or trying to get attention of strangers. So I think that is an issue, and that is maybe why there aren't more people that go out on the streets. But I guess so long as we can try and encourage people to do anything that they feel that they can do, even if lots of vegans were to perhaps try and encourage their local restaurants to have more vegan options, then that would be good, because then non-vegans would hopefully become to realise that actually there are more food choices for them, and they can go for something that's vegan. It just gets that vegan word out there as well. But yeah, with regards to doing demos and things, people are kind of putting themselves out there, and sometimes people that go vegan aren't naturally extrovert people, but they are quite inhibited. So it's a big step for people and out of their comfort zone, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I think about veganism is about not doing something, isn't it? It's about not doing something. It's about refraining from doing certain things, refraining from consuming animal products, refraining. I mean, the definition of vegan is being opposed to all animal exploitation. So being a vegan would be like refraining from going to the zoo and refraining to going to the greyhound race and things like that, as well as refraining from consuming animal products. And so we're talking about something that is to do with not doing something, whereas activism is actually to do with actually doing something and putting yourself forward. And that may be where the problem lies, you see, because although it's kind of easy to think, well, becoming a vegan is kind of, people have already done the difficult thing. People have already made a lifestyle choice that kind of is possibly going to lead them into problems with their family, with their friends, with their work colleagues, where people don't understand and take the mickey and stuff like that. And it can be easy to think, well, that's those people become vegan and they're already putting up with that. So kind of getting out there and educating people to become vegan isn't that difficult compared with what vegans have already had to kind of cope with. Yeah, I mean, there may be vegans that think that, yeah, But if vegans are vegans because we want animal liberation, we want animals to be free from persecution by humans, then obviously in order to achieve that, we've got to change human behaviour. And in order to change human behaviour, we've got to engage with people to educate them.
I was just going to go back to the point about being being new to veganism, because I'm also quite new to it. I've only been vegan for like 6 months or something, but it's kind of the other way around for me. I found it really helpful to sort of jump straight into sort of being an actor, going out and being active in the sort of vegan scene, because I felt so strongly about it. So I feel like and also I think that if people have an easy, because I had a really easy time going vegan, because my family are all really supportive and we're all vegetarian, but I was the first one to go vegan. I didn't have a hard time at all. So I feel like if people do have an easy time going vegan, then I feel like they should sort of capitalise on that and make use of, like, rather than concentrate. Because obviously, because a friend of mine went vegan and his parents are farmers, so obviously that was a complete major like shift in lifestyle. So he had a really hard time doing that. But so he was concentrating a lot of his time on sort of convincing his parents that it was the right choice and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like if you have an easy time doing it, then there's no reason for you not to sort of jump straight in and sort of get out there and start doing things, because it's sort of I feel like a lot of vegans feel really, really strongly about it at the start because they've just experienced this sort of awakening almost. So they feel so strongly about it, then they may as well sort of capitalise on that and go out and sort of make their voice heard, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I think that's, that's very much the sort of position I was in when I became vegan, where I felt that I kind of had to go out there and change everyone. And sometimes you can be a bit too zealous with that and actually put people off, which I think I probably did a little bit at the beginning. But yeah, there is a difficulty of lack of confidence with people being out there speaking to people on the street if you've never done that before. But that's where the local group, your local vegan outreach group, comes in, because if you can get together with other people in your local area and do things together, then it's so much easier, because you're not doing it on your own if you've got the support of others. And how many people here are involved in a group like that does things with other people? Yeah, there's a few people here, and are there people here that would kind of like to do more outreach but feel unable to because there's not anyone else there to do it with? Is anyone in that position? Because in most areas now there are vegan groups, or there is some sort of vegan group that you can get involved in. And this, of course, is where Facebook is useful, that most, if not all, of these groups are on Facebook, and you can actually join them and get involved. One of the problems is that quite a lot of these groups are just social groups. They're there organising meals and organising various social activities without actually getting out and educating the public. But that's no reason why not to get involved with those groups. It's a good thing to socialise with other vegans. You might just be able to push them in the direction of doing a bit of activity. But the other thing that you can do, if you're living in an area and you want to go out and do vegan outreach, then you can use social media to help with that, because you can set up your own local vegan outreach group, set up a group on Facebook, and then let people know about that. And you'll find that other vegans in that area will come and join. Let the national groups know that you've started off a group. Let Viva know, and Animal Aid and the Vegan Society, people like that. So that you can attract more people. And the other thing that I think is important to recognise, like I said, if we're going to change people, we need to understand how people behave. Now, who can tell me some kind of general traits about most ordinary people? what they're like in general. Yeah.
People like to think that they're kind and considerate. So if you can appeal to people's kindness to try and kind of pull at their heartstrings a bit, but also try and make the diet seem very appealing to them, for instance, the benefits to their health, etc., then I think that would be a good method. And also it would make it seem that you're not being at all critical as well, because sometimes people are a bit hyper defensive and sensitive with these matters.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that most people in this country would consider themselves as being opposed to cruelty to animals. It's just that doesn't get taken to its natural conclusion. People care about dogs and cats, for instance, and will be opposed to some forms of animal abuse, but they won't have made the natural progression to including animals on farms, for instance, in that, and so they're not vegan. But if people have got that initial concern and compassion, then we can get them to become vegan. And I think this is another, kind of goes back to the debate today between, what's the best way of educating people, what's the best way of changing the world? Is it single issues? Is it just educating people to become vegan? But I think often it can be a combination, because I've found myself that if you do a stall and you have on the stall "Go Vegan," you've got a message that says "Go Vegan," some people will come up to that, but a lot of people won't, because they think, oh, I could never go vegan, that's really difficult, I'm not going to bother, I'm going to walk past. Whereas if you had a stall, say, save the seals or protect the whales or stop cruelty to dogs or something like that, what will happen is a lot of people will come up, because most people are opposed to that kind of cruelty, and they think, well, that's going to be easy, I can come up and sign that petition, and that's something I feel I can do. And when that person comes up to the stall and signs the petition, then what you can do is give them literature about veganism. And I find that the very best literature that I've ever used myself are booklets from Animal Aid. I don't know whether anyone knows about Animal Aid. Have got these booklets, Meat Free for Under a Fiver and Guide to Going Vegan and Veggie. And they're excellent, because there aren't any horrible pictures of cruelty on the front. There's pictures of cakes, and they look like a recipe book. And if someone comes up to sign a stall to your stall to sign something about against some form of cruelty to animals, you can say, thank you for signing the petition, have a free recipe booklet. And if people take that home and read them, they'll find out in that booklet all the reasons for going vegan. And to me, they are the best educational tools for getting people to go vegan, because people will take them. I find that you have leaflets on your stall about all the different forms of cruelty to animals. People tend not to take them. Oh, I don't want to see those horrible pictures, I'm not going to look at that. You give them a nice recipe book that's also got the other information, and that's a way of getting through to people. And it's a very, very, very good tool for doing that. Because I think some other things about people, talking about people, and you're absolutely right, and most people do not support cruelty, and it's only the minority of people, very small minority of people are involved in actual cruel activities in this country, where they're going out and hunting and actually being cruel to animals. Most people in this country eat meat and eat animal products, and the reason they do it is because they've been conditioned, and somebody mentioned this earlier, that those people have been conditioned since birth to do that. And so they've kind of been brainwashed. And so what we have to do is unbrainwash people, is to lead people down a different path, to educate them, and to use the kind of part of that person that cares about animals, that say cares about dogs and cats as opposed to cruelty, to kind of expand that and say, well, look, like a pig's not, is just as intelligent as a dog, so why do you love your dog and eat a pig? Things like that, where you can kind of expand people's horizons with regard to concern for animals. The other thing about people is human beings tend to all want to be the same as one another. People don't like to stand out from the crowd. I mean, that might not apply to people in this room. We thought, well, you know, that prepared to go vegan, prepared to stand out from the crowd, prepared to be different. But a lot of people aren't. We have to remember that a lot of people aren't like that in the same way as us. That most people don't like to be different to other people. They don't like to stand out. So in order to kind of, I think we have to kind of make veganism seem as normal as possible and appear as easy as possible for ordinary people. In other words, we've got to come across as like people that are just ordinary, people that enjoy life. We're vegan, we're healthy, we enjoy life. We do the same as everyone else, but we can live quite happily on a vegan diet. And people find it a lot easier then, I think, to become vegan if they think that it's something that's more normal. The other thing that means, this idea of people not wanting to be different, is that it's a very, when you're talking about converting a lot of people to veganism, it's a very difficult struggle at first, because you're asking people to do something that's unusual. You're asking people to be different to other people. So it's a hard struggle at first. In these days, I mean, really, vegan outreach in this country as a major type of campaigning is really quite new. It's really quite new compared with other campaigning for animal protection. It's maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 years that it's really kind of been going, and that's only a very small amount of time, you know, in historical terms. And so, you know, the number of vegans at the moment is going to be small. But what will happen is, as we gradually increase the number of vegans, it'll get to a point when being vegan is no longer that unusual. It kind of will become a fairly normal thing to be vegan. And when we reach that point, suddenly lots more people will become vegan because it won't be unusual anymore. And I know that kind of might be uncomfortable with some people, because we kind of like to think, well, you know, people are vegan because it's, you know, eating animals, consuming animal products and all the cruelty and suffering that's involved and killing. That's wrong, you know, that's ethically wrong, so people shouldn't do it, and people shouldn't do it for that reason, you see. It doesn't matter who else is vegan, who else isn't vegan, that because it's wrong to consume animal products, people should read that and then decide, I'm not going to do it. But unfortunately, that isn't the way people operate. People don't operate like that. There's all sorts of emotional and psychological things going on with people that kind of actually stop them operating like that. And one of them is this desire to be the same as everyone, this very strong social pull to be the same as everyone else. And once we overcome that, once the number of vegans gradually rises to a certain level, when being vegan is more normal, then I think we'll get a big increase in the number of vegans. The other thing is, obviously, with people are creatures of habit. People don't like change. No animals like change. If you change an animal's environment, I don't know if people have got cats and dogs at home and they change something in those animal environment, change something around in the house. Often animals don't like that. They feel uncomfortable because their environment's changed, and all animals are like that. We're like that too, as a species. People don't like change, but don't like things that are different. And we're asking people to make a really big fundamental change in their lifestyle. And so we've got to make, that's another reason for making that change seem as easy as possible. And I think one of those things is now, you know, that with, say, the vegan meat products, you know, the artificial meat products and the vegan cheeses. There are some vegans that won't eat those and say, well, no, I'm not eating those because that's just pretending to be meat or pretending to be cheese. But the thing is, for people that have, you know, that are used to that taste of meat, used to that taste of cheese, it's a very good way of people being able to make a change that doesn't seem like so much of a change. And so it's easier for them to do that. So I don't know how are we now? We've got 1 minute left. Okay. Well, I was going to, the second part of my talk, because I believe that as I say, that any form of action's good. I'm not one to be involved in a an argument with people that do any form of action for animals. I think it's all good. But I think that, as I've just said, that the most important way to change people really fundamentally is to educate people to be vegan, we could say that it's actually one of the most vital things we can do. But we also have to consider what the problem may be with that. Can anyone very quickly, because I'll just very, very quickly kind of leave something hanging in the air here, right? And that is the idea of educating people. Where is there a problem with that? If we're trying to change the way people behave by way of education, where could there be a problem with that? Can anyone tell me? Yeah.
Don't talk down to people, well, if you're trying to educate them.
Yeah, don't talk down to people. Well, I think that's absolutely right. But I was kind of thinking of where could it be that just trying to change people through education would fail and wouldn't be enough to achieve animal liberation?
There could be lots of people that would like to be vegan because they do think that the cruelty is unacceptable and animals shouldn't suffer, but it's actually putting that into actuality, making it happen. So I think the stumbling block for many might be that in their heart they do want to make that change, but they find it too difficult in society. So if we were able to kind of encourage supermarkets to have more like vegan foods, and same with restaurants and things, then that would facilitate it for people and make it easier for them to actually be vegan. Instead they might just be like, oh, it's too difficult. So even though they have the will, well, you would hope that they would then be able to action that, but I think maybe there is a hurdle in that they want to, but it's just they find it too difficult in actuality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to finish now because we've got someone waiting to do the next talk. Yeah, I mean, that's true. But what I'm going to leave you with is that what do we do with the people that can't be educated, and how do we change that? Yes. Okay. Right now, I'm going to have to end here because we've got the next talk coming up soon. But thanks everyone for coming along. And do try, and if you're not doing anything in terms of promoting veganism, try and think what you can do, get involved with other people, and just, even if you can only do a little bit, then please do it because it all helps. Thanks very much.